I am Amanda, 28 years old, and I never thought my wedding day would begin with financial terrorism. The notification came at 11:30 a.m., 33 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle at the Rosewood Chapel in Millbrook Springs. My phone buzzed against the marble countertop of the bridal suite as my maid of honor Grace was adjusting my veil. That single alert changed everything. My parents had just frozen every account I owned. If you are watching this, let me know where you are from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button, and prepare for the wedding day from hell. To understand why my parents would do something so extreme on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, you need to know about our relationship. I grew up in Millbrook Springs, a wealthy enclave where appearances matter more than happiness. My parents, Margaret and Richard Hamilton, were pillars of the community. Dad ran a successful investment firm, and Mom chaired every social committee worth joining. From the outside, we were the perfect American family. Behind closed doors, it was a different story. Control was always their love language. Every decision I made was scrutinized, from what clothes I wore to which friends I could invite over. My mother planned my sweet 16 down to the color of the napkins, ignoring my own preferences. My father monitored my spending through high school with a family credit card that generated reports sent directly to his email. When I received college acceptance letters, they made it clear that they would only pay for schools they approved of. I chose Princeton because it satisfied their Ivy League requirements, while being far enough away that I could breathe. Those 4 years gave me my first taste of independence, though they still paid for everything and reminded me of it constantly. "We invest in your future because we know best," my father would say during our monthly finance reviews over the phone. I accepted their control because I knew no other way. After graduation, I landed a job as a junior financial analyst at Blackwell Partners in New York City. This was my first real step toward independence. I excelled at my job, working 60-hour weeks and climbing the corporate ladder faster than most of my peers. Within 3 years, I was making 6 figures, and finally felt like I was building my own life. That is when I met James. He was 30, worked in the legal department, and caught my attention during a corporate retreat. Unlike the polished, privileged men my parents had always pushed me toward, James was refreshingly genuine. His parents were public school teachers from Ohio. He had put himself through state college and law school with scholarships and student loans. He was kind, intelligent, and completely unimpressed by wealth for its own sake. Our first date was at a hole-in-the-wall pizzeria that became our special place. When he proposed a year later, he did it there with a modest ring he had saved for refusing my offer to pick something out together. "This is something I wanted to do on my own," he explained. My parents hated him on principle. "A lawyer from Ohio State," my mother said, with thinly veiled disgust when I brought him home for Christmas. "Darling, you could do so much better. What about Alexander Morgan's son? He just made partner at Goldman." The tension escalated when we announced our engagement. My father took James aside during a family dinner and offered to help him advance his career if he signed a prenuptial agreement. James politely declined both offers. When he left the room, my father turned to me. "He is after your money, Amanda. Men like him always are." "I make my own money now, Dad," I reminded him. "And James makes almost as much as I do." "For now," he replied ominously. The wedding planning became a battleground. My parents insisted on paying, which I initially refused. "We can handle it ourselves," I told them. But they persisted, and I eventually gave in, after my mother tearfully accused me of denying her the joy of planning her only daughter's wedding. That was my first mistake. Every decision became a negotiation. The venue had to be the Rosewood Chapel, where generations of local elite had married. The guest list expanded to include business associates and social connections I barely knew. When I wanted a simple, elegant dress, my mother insisted on a custom designer gown that cost more than some people's cars. James and I fought about it. "This is not the wedding we wanted," he said, after a particularly tense cake tasting, where my mother had dismissed the baker we liked. "I know," I admitted. "But maybe we just get through this. and then our married life is our own. My second mistake was not recognizing the pattern. The wedding was never about our happiness. It was about maintaining my parents' control and social standing. The more James and I tried to assert ourselves, the tighter they gripped. A week before the wedding, my father called a meeting at their house. "We need to discuss the financial arrangements," he said, sliding a document across the table. It was a post-nuptial agreement that would keep any inheritance or family gifts separate from our marital assets. "This is insulting," James said quietly. "This is prudent," my father countered. "Amanda has trust funds and future inheritance to consider." "We already discussed this," I reminded them. "We are not signing anything." My mother looked pained. "Think about what you are doing, Amanda. This family has built wealth for generations. We cannot just hand it over to someone we barely know." "You have known James for 2 years," I pointed out. "Not long enough to risk everything on," my father replied. We left without signing, but the tension hung in the air. The final week of wedding preparations was strained. My parents were coldly efficient, handling last-minute details while barely speaking to James. I thought they had accepted defeat and were just processing their disappointment. I had no idea they were planning their next move. The morning of my wedding day dawned with perfect blue skies, the kind of April day that photographers dream about. I woke up in the bridal suite of the Rosewood Hotel, surrounded by champagne flutes and room service breakfast trays. My bridesmaids arrived at 8 a.m., followed by the hairstylist and makeup artist my mother had insisted on hiring. Grace, my best friend since college and maid of honor, kept everything running smoothly. She handed out custom robes to the bridal party, made sure everyone had mimosas, and ran interference when my mother called every 20 minutes with just one more question about the reception details. "You seem calm," Grace commented, as the makeup artist applied my foundation. "I feel calm," I replied, surprised to find it was true. "I just want to marry James. The rest is noise." By 11 a.m., I was fully transformed. The designer gown my mother had chosen was admittedly stunning, a cascade of delicate lace and tiny pearls. My hair was swept up into an elegant updo, and the cathedral-length veil added the perfect traditional touch. The photographer captured shots of me looking pensively out the window, laughing with my bridesmaids, and practicing my first dance steps with Grace. "20 minutes until your father comes to escort you down," the wedding planner announced, checking her clipboard. "We are right on schedule." That was when my phone buzzed. I almost did not check it, assuming it was another text from my mother. But Grace brought it over, and I glanced at the screen as she adjusted my veil. The notification was from my bank app. "Your account access has been temporarily suspended. Please contact customer service." "That is weird," I murmured, opening the app. When I tried to log in, a message appeared. "This account has been frozen, pending verification. Please visit your local branch or call our security department." I felt the first flutter of panic. "Grace, something is wrong with my bank account." She frowned. "Today of all days. Maybe it is just a glitch." I tried my investment account app next. Same message. Then my credit cards, all frozen. "This cannot be a coincidence," I said, my hands shaking. "Someone has frozen all my accounts." My phone buzzed again with a text message from my father. "We need to talk before the ceremony. The post-nuptial agreement is with our attorney in the hotel lobby. Once James signs, we can resolve these unfortunate banking issues." I stared at the message in disbelief. "They did this," I whispered, showing Grace the phone. "My parents froze my accounts to force us to sign their agreement." Grace read the message, her face transforming from confusion to outrage. "Are you serious? On your wedding day? That is financial abuse, Amanda." My breathing became shallow as the implications sank in. Not only had they frozen my main accounts, but also my backup savings, and even my credit cards. This was not an impulsive act. They had systematically cut off every financial resource I had on my wedding day, 30 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. "Call the bank," Grace urged, already dialing James on her phone. The customer service representative confirmed my fears. Yes, Miss Hamilton, your accounts have been temporarily frozen at the request of the secondary account holders, pending resolution of a security concern. Secondary account holders. My parents are not on my accounts, I protested. According to our records, Margaret and Richard Hamilton are listed as security contacts with temporary freeze authorization on these accounts. I felt sick. I had signed those forms years ago, when I opened my first accounts in college, never thinking they would use this power. I had never updated the authorizations even after becoming financially independent. This is my money. I earned it. I told the representative, tears threatening to ruin my carefully applied makeup. I understand your frustration, but I cannot lift the freeze without proper authorization. You would need to visit a branch with identification. It is my wedding day. The banks are closed tomorrow. This cannot wait. I apologize for the inconvenience, but there is nothing I can do over the phone. I hung up as James burst into the bridal suite, still adjusting his tie. He looked alarmed but determined. Grace called me. What is happening? He asked, taking my hands. My parents froze all my accounts, I explained, showing him my father's text. They are trying to force us to sign their postnuptial agreement. James read the message, his jaw tightening. This is unbelievable. They are holding your money hostage. All of it. My checking, savings, investments, even my credit cards. Can they legally do that? Apparently they have some kind of security authorization I never removed from when I was in college. James paced the room, his hands clenched. So what are they expecting? That I will just sign away your financial independence to get the wedding back on track? Our wedding is in 30 minutes, James. What are we going to do? He took a deep breath. We need to call them. My mother answered on the first ring, as if she had been waiting. Amanda. Is James with you? How could you do this? I demanded, putting the phone on speaker. You froze my accounts on my wedding day. We did what was necessary, my father's voice cut in. He must have been right beside her. This family has certain standards that must be maintained. Standards. You are committing financial abuse. Do not be melodramatic, Amanda, my mother replied coolly. This is about protecting the family assets. You have been unreasonable about this simple request. A postnuptial agreement, the week of our wedding, was not a simple request, James interjected. And this is not how reasonable people negotiate. We have the family's best interests at heart, my father insisted. Sign the agreement, and we can proceed with the ceremony as planned. The accounts will be unfrozen immediately. And if we do not? I asked, already knowing the answer. Then, I suggest you start explaining to 200 guests why there will not be a wedding today. The rosewood requires final payment before the ceremony, which has not yet been made. The caterers and florists are waiting for the same. Without access to funds, I do not see how you can proceed. The calculated cruelty of their plan hit me full force. They had timed this perfectly, waiting until the last possible moment when I would have no recourse. The banks were closed for the weekend. The vendors needed payment. Even if I could somehow get the accounts unfrozen, it would take days. I cannot believe you would ruin your daughter's wedding day over money, Grace said, unable to contain her outrage. This is not about money, my mother replied. This is about family legacy and making wise decisions. Amanda has always been impulsive. Impulsive. I had dated James for 2 years. I had worked my way up in my career through discipline and hard work. Yet they still saw me as a child, incapable of making my own choices. We are not signing anything, I said, firmly finding strength in my anger, and we are getting married today with or without your money. I hung up before they could respond, then burst into tears. My perfect day was collapsing around me, and I had no idea how to fix it. The bridal suite fell silent, except for my muffled sobs. James knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. Amanda, look at me, he said gently. We have options. What options? I asked, mascara tracking down my cheeks. They have cut us off completely. The venue needs to be paid. The caterers need to be paid. Even the florists are waiting for their final payment. Money is just money, James said firmly. We can figure this out. Grace was already on her phone. I am checking my accounts now. I can transfer some emergency funds. Rachel, my bridesmaid from work, joined in. I have about 5,000 in savings. It is yours if you need it. And I can call my brother James, suggested. Michael just got his bonus. He might be able to help. I shook my head. I cannot ask everyone to empty their savings for my wedding. Our wedding, James corrected. And you are not asking. We are offering. My phone buzzed again. A text from my father. The attorney is waiting in the lobby. You have 20 minutes to make the right decision. I showed James the message, and something shifted in his expression. The calm, reasonable lawyer was replaced by someone fiercely protective. This ends now, he said, standing up. We need to talk to them face to face. Now. We are supposed to be getting married in less than 30 minutes. Better to delay 20 minutes than start our marriage with this hanging over us. He was right. I nodded, and Grace helped me arrange my dress so I could move through the hotel corridors without tripping. The four of us made our way to the elevator, an odd procession of formal wear and grim expressions. My parents were in the lobby bar with a silver-haired man I recognized as their attorney, Frederick Patterson. They looked surprised to see us, as if they had expected me to simply cave to their demands. Amanda, my mother gasped, you should not be down here. It is bad luck for the groom to see the bride before the ceremony. I think that ship has sailed, I replied coldly. What you have done goes beyond bad luck. My father straightened his already perfect tie. We are simply trying to protect you. By sabotaging my wedding day. By holding my own money hostage. The money is just leverage, he explained, as if discussing a business deal. Once the agreement is signed, everything goes back to normal. James stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton, I have respected you both, for Amanda's sake, despite your obvious disdain for me, but this crosses every line of decency. Young man, my father began, but James cut him off. I am not interested in your money. I have never been interested in your money. I love your daughter. That is all. But what you have done today shows that you do not love her. You love control. My mother flinched. How dare you? Everything we have done has been for Amanda. Really, I interjected, was humiliating me on my wedding day for me, was threatening to ruin the biggest day of my life for me. Frederick Patterson cleared his throat. Perhaps we should all calm down and discuss this rationally. There is nothing rational about financial extortion, Grace said. This is a family matter, my father replied dismissively. No, I said, finding my voice growing stronger. This is my life, my money that I earned, my wedding day that you are destroying. I turned to the attorney. Mr. Patterson, as a lawyer, are you comfortable being part of what amounts to financial coercion? He had the decency to look uncomfortable. I simply prepare the documents as requested by my clients. Well, your clients are using those documents to commit emotional and financial abuse, James stated, which I would be happy to discuss with the State Bar Association. Frederick paled slightly. Richard, perhaps we should reconsider the timing of this discussion. My father waved him off. Amanda knows what she needs to do. Sign the papers and the wedding proceeds as planned. I looked at my parents, these people who had raised me, who had in their own twisted way, tried to give me the best of everything. In this moment I saw them clearly, for perhaps the first time. They would never change. No amount of success or happiness on my part would convince them that I could make my own decisions. No, I said quietly. I will not sign anything, and we are still getting married today. Do not be ridiculous, my mother hissed. How will you pay for everything? The final balances are due now. We will figure it out, James said, putting his arm around me. Without your help. Then you will have no wedding, my father declared. The Rosewood will not proceed without payment. The caterers will pack up and leave. Then we will get married somewhere else, I decided in that moment. With the people who actually care about us. I turned to leave, but my father called after me. If you walk away now, there will be consequences, Amanda. Financial consequences you cannot imagine. I stopped and faced him one last time. I already paid the ultimate price for your love, Dad. I almost lost myself. I will not lose James, too. Back in the bridal suite, the wedding planner was in full panic mode. The ceremony was supposed to start 5 minutes ago. The guests are seated. The musicians are playing the prelude music. What is going on? I took a deep breath. We need to make some changes. The Rosewood Chapel is no longer available. Her eyes widened. What? But everything is set up. The flowers, the altar arrangements, I know, I interrupted. But we need a new plan. Right now. James was already on the phone with his brother Michael explaining the situation. Grace was contacting the bridesmaids and groomsmen. Rachel was searching for alternate venues on her phone. The park, she suggested. Millbrook Springs Park has that beautiful gazebo by the lake. It is public property. They cannot stop us from getting married there. In April, without a reservation, the wedding planner protested. Do you have a better idea? I asked. She thought for a moment, then her professional instincts kicked in. Let me make some calls. I know the manager at the Grand Terrace restaurant overlooking the park. They have a private garden that might work for the ceremony. The reception would be smaller, but they could probably accommodate about 50 people on short notice. Do it, I authorized. James finished his call with a relieved smile. Michael is transferring $10,000 to my account right now. It should clear within the hour. That should cover the immediate expenses. And I can advance another $5,000 on my credit card, Grace added. The wedding planner was already in planning mode. We will need to inform the guests of the change in venue. The florist can transport the essential arrangements. The photographer needs to be redirected. What about the cake? Rachel asked. The baker is a friend of mine, the planner replied. She will help us. Within 20 frantic minutes, a new plan emerged from the chaos. The ceremony would take place at the Grand Terrace Garden at 3 p.m., delayed by 2 hours. The reception would follow immediately in their main dining room. Scaled down, but still elegant, the wedding party would inform guests personally about the change. James looked at me. Are you sure about this? We could postpone, do this right another time. I shook my head. I am not letting them win. We are getting married today. Word spread quickly through the Rosewood Chapel. Guests whispered among themselves as the bridal party explained that the ceremony had been moved. My parents remained seated in the front row, stone-faced, as people began gathering their things and checking the new address on their phones. What happened? I overheard one of my mother's friends asking her. Amanda had a last-minute change of heart about the venue, my mother replied smoothly. You know how young brides can be, so impulsive. I bit my tongue and focused on the task at hand. The wedding party caravaned to the Grand Terrace, bringing whatever decorations we could salvage. The restaurant staff scrambled to arrange chairs in their garden, which was fortunately in full spring bloom. The florist arrived with the ceremony arch and essential arrangements, setting them up with impressive speed. My dress, which had seemed so perfect in the elegant Rosewood Chapel, now felt excessive in this simpler setting. But as I waited in the restaurant's small office that was serving as our makeshift bridal suite, I found I did not care anymore. Your makeup needs touching up, Grace said, gently dabbing at the tear stains on my cheeks. Does it matter? I asked. Yes, she said firmly. Because this is still your wedding day, and you are still marrying the man you love. The rest is just decoration. She was right. I took a deep breath and let her fix my makeup. The upheaval had stripped away all the superficial concerns that had consumed the past year of planning. The color-coordinated napkins, the custom table numbers, the precisely timed sparkler exit no longer mattered. What remained was the essential truth: I loved James, and I wanted to marry him. At precisely 3 p.m., The small string quartet that had followed us from the rosewood began playing. The garden doors opened, and I saw James waiting beneath a rose-covered arch. Only about 60 guests had made the transition to the new venue. My parents were notably absent. With no one to walk me down the aisle, I began the walk alone, but before I had taken 3 steps, Grace moved to my side. "No one walks alone on their wedding day," she whispered, linking her arm with mine. Rachel joined on my other side, and together, my bridesmaids escorted me toward my future husband. The guests rose smiling with tears in their eyes. In that moment, I felt more supported and loved than I ever had under my parents' controlling care. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. The officiant, who had graciously adjusted his schedule, spoke about resilience and true partnership. James and I had hastily rewritten our vows in the chaos of the venue change, and they were better for it. "Amanda," James said, holding my hands in his, "today has shown me that, with you by my side, we can overcome any obstacle. I promise to be your partner in all things, to face whatever challenges come our way together, and to never let anyone come between us or diminish what we have built." My vows were equally unpolished, but sincere. "James, I choose you, not because it is easy or convenient, but because loving you has taught me what real support feels like. I promise to stand with you to build our own traditions and forge our own path free from manipulation or control. Whatever comes next, we face it as equals." When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the small gathering erupted in cheers that seemed to make up in enthusiasm what they lacked in numbers. We processed back down the makeshift aisle to the restaurant's main room, where the staff had performed minor miracles in setting up a reception space. The wedding coordinator approached us apologetically. "We have had to make some adjustments to the timeline. The DJ could not make the venue change, but the restaurant has a sound system we can use." The 4-tier cake became a 2-tier, with sheet cakes in the back, and the formal dinner has been replaced with a buffet-style service. "It is perfect," I assured her, "truly." And surprisingly, it was. The smaller, more intimate reception had a warmth that the grand ballroom at the Rosewood would have lacked. Friends gathered around tables, sharing stories and offering toasts. The makeshift playlist became a group effort, with guests taking turns selecting songs. Our first dance was to a slightly fuzzy version of At Last, playing through someone's phone, connected to the restaurant speakers. James held me close and whispered, "Are you okay?" I am better than okay, I realized. I am free. As the night progressed, I kept expecting to feel sadness about my parents' absence, but instead I felt a strange lightness. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to their manipulation and chosen my own path. Grace found me near the dessert table and hugged me tight. "I am so proud of you, Amanda. What your parents did was unforgivable." "I do not know what happens next," I admitted. "We are starting our marriage in debt to our friends, with my accounts frozen, and my parents furious." "But you are starting it honestly on your own terms," she reminded me. "That is worth more than any fancy reception." As the improvised celebration wound down, James and I thanked each guest personally for sticking with us through the chaos. Many had quietly contributed to a cash gift that would help us cover immediate expenses. My colleague Thomas from the financial department promised to help me sort out the banking issues first thing Monday morning. When we finally made it to our hotel room, exhausted but happy, I kicked off my uncomfortable heels and sat on the edge of the bed. "Some wedding day, huh?" James said, loosening his tie. "Not exactly what we planned." "No, it was better," he said with surprising conviction. "Because it was real. It was us making decisions together, supporting each other, not just following someone else's script." I thought about this as I changed out of my elaborate gown. "You know this is not over, right? My parents will not just let this go." James nodded. "I know, but whatever comes next, we will handle it together." I fell asleep in my husband's arms, emotionally drained, but strangely peaceful. I had no idea that the battle with my parents was just beginning, or that I would soon discover a way to turn their own tactics against them. Our honeymoon was a modest 3-day getaway to a beachside bed, and breakfast paid for with James's credit card, since mine were still frozen. We spent the time walking on the shore, making love, and trying not to worry about the financial mess waiting for us back home. "We need a plan," James said on our last morning, as we watched the sunrise from our balcony. "I know," I agreed. "First priority is getting my accounts unfrozen. And making sure they can never do this again." When we returned home, reality hit hard. Our apartment rent was due in a week. My accounts remained frozen despite multiple calls to the bank. The wedding debts to our friends weighed heavily on my conscience. Monday morning, I marched into my local bank branch with my marriage certificate and driver's license. "I need to speak to the manager about unauthorized freezes on my accounts," I told the teller. The manager, a sympathetic woman named Patricia, reviewed my documents and frowned. "This is unusual. The security freeze was initiated by secondary signatories." "My parents," I explained. "Who should not have that authority over my adult accounts?" She typed something into her computer. "It appears they were added as security contacts with temporary freeze authorization when the accounts were first opened. When I was 18, I confirmed. I never removed them because I did not know I needed to." Patricia nodded understanding. "Unfortunately, removing the freeze requires either their authorization or a court order establishing financial independence." "Court order," I repeated, dismayed. "That could take weeks." "I am afraid those are the procedures for security holds of this nature." I left the bank feeling defeated. James met me for lunch, his expression hopeful until he saw my face. "No luck?" he asked. "They need a court order, or my parents' permission," I explained, "neither of which we can get quickly." James, ever practical, outlined our immediate options. We would live on his salary and credit cards until we could resolve the situation. His brother Michael had generously converted his wedding contribution into a gift rather than a loan. We would be tight financially, but we could manage. "We need legal help," he said. "I know some good attorneys at the firm who specialize in family financial disputes." "We cannot afford legal fees right now," I reminded him. "We will figure it out. Maybe someone can take the case pro bono or on contingency." I nodded, but my mind was already working on another angle. I had worked in financial services for years. There had to be something I was missing, some leverage I could use to resolve this quickly. That evening, I was sorting through old financial documents in our apartment when I found a folder labeled Family Financial Planning. Inside were statements from various investment accounts, including my parents' retirement funds. I had almost forgotten that 3 years earlier my father had added me as an authorized financial advisor on their accounts, proud that his daughter was following in his footsteps. "For peace of mind," he had said. "In case anything happens to us, you will have access to manage things." At the time, I had seen it as a rare sign of trust. Now I wondered if it could be the key to resolving our standoff. I called my colleague Thomas, who specialized in high-net-worth account management. "If someone is an authorized financial advisor on an account, what exactly can they do?" I asked hypothetically. "Depends on the authorization level," he explained. "Usually they can view balances, make investment decisions, and in some cases place temporary holds for suspicious activity." "Suspicious activity," I repeated, "like unusual withdrawal patterns or potential fraud." "Exactly. It is a protective measure for clients." I thanked him, and hung up, my mind racing. I had never considered using my authorization on my parents' accounts. It had seemed like a formality, a symbolic gesture of family trust. But they had violated that trust in the most public, humiliating way possible. The next day I did more research. My parents had been planning this financial ambush for weeks, maybe months. They had systematically ensured they had freeze authorization on all my accounts. What I had thought was parental concern over the years was actually a carefully maintained system of financial control. More disturbing was what I discovered when I accessed their account information using my advisor credentials. They had been moving substantial assets around in the weeks before my wedding. Large sums had been transferred to offshore accounts. Their will had been updated to place most of their estate in trusts, with strict conditions. I found draft emails to their attorney, discussing how to protect family assets from potential claims after my marriage. They had been preparing to cut me out completely if I did not comply with their demands. James found me at the kitchen table surrounded by printouts, my laptop open to financial records. "What is all this?" he asked. "Evidence," I replied. "My parents have been planning this for months, and I found something else. They have been engaging in some questionable tax strategies with their retirement accounts, moving money between entities in ways that might not stand up to scrutiny." Amanda, James said carefully. "What are you thinking?" I looked up at my husband. "I am thinking that they used their financial authority to hurt us. Maybe it is time I used mine to protect us." "You have authority over their accounts." "I am an authorized financial advisor on their retirement portfolio. I was added years ago, as a precaution. I can place security holds if I suspect irregular activity." James sat down across from me. "Are you suggesting what I think you are?" "They froze my accounts on our wedding day. What if I froze their retirement funds pending a fraud investigation?" He considered this. "That would certainly get their attention. But is it legal?" "As legal as what they did to me," I replied. "I have legitimate concerns about their recent account activities. The offshore transfers, the timing of their asset movements. As a financial professional, I could argue I had a duty to flag suspicious patterns." "This is a serious step," James cautioned. "It could escalate things further." "They already declared war," I reminded him. "Right now they think they have all the power. This would level the playing field for negotiation." We discussed the implications late into the night. The risks were significant. My parents could retaliate further. They could report me to my firm for misusing my authority. This could affect my professional reputation. But the alternative was weeks or months of financial hardship while pursuing legal remedies that might not even work. My parents had shown they were willing to use money as a weapon. Perhaps the only language they would understand was having their own tactics turned against them. The next morning, I made my decision. Using my advisor credentials, I submitted a formal security hold request on my parents' primary retirement accounts, citing unusual transfer patterns and potential tax irregularities requiring review. The hold would freeze withdrawals and major changes pending investigation. I attached documentation of the recent offshore transfers and excerpts from their emails, discussing asset protection strategies that skirted tax regulations. It was all factual, though. The context was carefully framed to raise red flags in the compliance department. Within hours, the automated system confirmed the security hold had been placed. My parents' retirement accounts, representing over 70% of their liquid wealth, were now frozen pending review. I then called the family attorney, Frederick Patterson. "Mr. Patterson, this is Amanda Hamilton. Well, Amanda Carter now. I need to schedule a meeting with my parents as soon as possible." "Regarding what matter?" he asked cautiously. "Regarding the mutual financial holds that seem to be affecting both my accounts and their retirement funds," I replied evenly. "I believe we can reach a resolution beneficial to all parties." There was a long pause. "I will check their availability and call you back." An hour later, we had a meeting scheduled for the following morning at Patterson's office. James would accompany me, and we would bring copies of all the documentation I had gathered. "Are you sure about this?" James asked that night as we prepared our strategy. "I have never been more sure of anything," I replied. "For the first time in my life, I am fighting back on equal terms." The offices of Patterson, Roberts and Klein occupied the top floor of a sleek downtown building. We arrived 15 minutes early, professionally dressed, and carrying a leather portfolio containing our documentation. James, in his best suit, looked every bit the corporate attorney. I had chosen a conservative black dress and pearl earrings, projecting confidence and seriousness. "Remember the plan," James whispered, as the elevator ascended. "Stay calm, stick to facts, and do not let them derail the conversation with emotional manipulation. I nodded, taking a deep breath. Facts, not feelings. The receptionist showed us to a conference room where my parents and Frederick Patterson were already waiting. My mother looked tired, the carefully maintained facade showing cracks. My father sat rigidly in his chair, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Amanda," he said coldly as we entered, "I assume you are here to explain why our retirement accounts have been frozen." "I am here to negotiate a resolution to our mutual financial situation," I replied, maintaining a professional tone. Frederick cleared his throat. "Perhaps we could begin by establishing the facts. It seems there are financial holds on accounts belonging to both parties." "That is correct," I confirmed, opening my portfolio and distributing copies of a document I had prepared. This timeline outlines the sequence of events, beginning with the unauthorized freezing of my personal and investment accounts on April 10th, approximately 30 minutes before my wedding ceremony was scheduled to begin. My mother flinched at the clinical description of their actions. Following that event, I continued, and after discovering unusual transfer patterns and potential tax irregularities in the Hamilton family retirement accounts, I exercised my fiduciary duty as an authorized financial advisor to request a blanking Mangel advisor, security hold pending investigation. "This is outrageous," my father interrupted. "You are abusing your authorization out of spite." James spoke for the first time. "No more outrageous than freezing your daughter's accounts on her wedding day as a form of financial coercion." Frederick looked uncomfortable. "Perhaps we should focus on finding a path forward rather than assigning blame." "I agree," I said. "I have prepared a proposed resolution." I distributed another document. "In summary, I request the immediate unfreezing of all my personal and investment accounts, the removal of any secondary authorizations or security contacts from said accounts, and a written agreement that no further attempts will be made to control my finances." My father scanned the document, his face reddening. "And in exchange, you will unfreeze our retirement accounts. This is blackmail." "This is negotiation," I corrected, "using the same leverage tactics you employed against me." "We were trying to protect you," my mother insisted. "You have no idea what you are doing." "I am a financial analyst with 6 years of experience managing portfolios larger than our family's entire net worth," I reminded her. "I know exactly what I am doing." Frederick reviewed the documents with professional detachment. "The proposal seems straightforward. The security holds on all accounts would be lifted simultaneously with written agreements preventing future interference." "There is more," my father said, flipping to the second page. "She wants us to cover the costs incurred from their venue change and emergency wedding arrangements. That was their choice." "A choice forced by your actions," James pointed out. "Those expenses were directly caused by your decision to freeze Amanda's accounts without warning on our wedding day." "We had every right," my father insisted, "as parents concerned about our daughter's future." "I am 28 years old," I said quietly. "I have built my own career, earned my own money, and chosen my own husband. Your concern does not entitle you to control my life." "Perhaps we should take a short break," Frederick suggested, noting the rising tension. During the break, James and I stepped into the hallway to regroup. "They are not going to admit they were wrong," he observed. "They do not need to," I replied. "They just need to sign the agreement." When we reconvened, my father had composed himself. "We have reviewed your proposal and have some concerns." Such as I asked. "The reimbursement figures are excessive, and the clause preventing any future financial gifts or support goes too far." I had anticipated this objection. The reimbursement amounts are documented expenses, with receipts attached in Appendix B. As for future financial interactions, the agreement does not prevent gifts. It prevents any gifts with conditions attached or any attempt to use financial resources as leverage in family matters. "That is a very broad interpretation," Frederick noted. "Based on recent experience, it seems necessary," James replied. My mother, who had been mostly silent, finally spoke. "Amanda, can we speak privately? Just the two of us." James looked at me questioningly. We had agreed to stay together during negotiations. "Anything you have to say can be said in front of my husband," I told her. She sighed. "Fine. I just want to understand why you are doing this. We are your parents. We love you. Everything we have ever done has been for your benefit." "If you truly believe that, then you do not understand the damage you have caused," I replied. "You humiliated me on my wedding day. You forced us to scramble for a new venue to explain to our guests why everything had changed to begin our marriage in debt to our friends. We were trying to protect the family assets," my father interjected. "No," I said firmly. "You were trying to maintain control. And when I refused to be controlled, you punished me in the most hurtful way possible." "That was not our intent," my mother claimed. I pulled out my phone and showed them the text message my father had sent. "We need to talk before the ceremony. The post-nuptial agreement is with our attorney in the hotel lobby. Once James signs, we can resolve these unfortunate banking issues." "Your intent was perfectly clear," I said. "Sign or suffer the consequences." My father had the decency to look uncomfortable. Frederick reviewed the documents again. "The terms are actually quite reasonable," he advised my parents. "The financial reimbursement is documented and fair. The provisions regarding future financial interactions simply establish healthy boundaries." "And if we refuse?" my father asked. "Then the security hold on your retirement accounts remains in place, pending a full investigation into the offshore transfers and tax strategies documented in my report," I explained. "That investigation could take months, during which time you would have limited access to those funds." "You would do that to your own parents?" my mother asked incredulously. "You did worse to your own daughter," James reminded them. The room fell silent, as my parents contemplated their options. Finally, my father spoke. "We need time to consider this." "You have until 5 p.m. today," I replied, standing up. "After that, I will be unable to expedite the removal of the security hold, and the standard investigation process will continue." As we prepared to leave, my mother caught my arm. "Amanda, please. We can work this out as a family." I looked into her eyes, searching for genuine understanding, but saw only the same manipulative tactics she had always used. "We are working it out," I replied, "with clear terms and boundaries, the way adult relationships should function." At 4:45 p.m., Frederick called to inform us that my parents had signed the agreement. By morning, all the account freezes would be lifted, and the wire transfer covering our wedding expenses would be processed. "Your parents wanted me to convey that they hope you will reconsider the restrictions on future financial interactions," he added. "The agreement allows for gifts and support freely given," I reminded him. "It only restricts those with strings attached." "I understand," he replied. "For what it is worth, I believe this resolution is for the best. Financial coercion within families rarely leads to healthy relationships." I thanked him and hung up feeling a complex mixture of relief, vindication, and sadness. James found me staring out our apartment window. "They signed?" he asked. I nodded. "It is over. At least this battle." He wrapped his arms around me. "How do you feel?" "Honestly, I do not know. Part of me is proud for standing up to them. Part of me is sad that it came to this." "That is understandable," he said. "They are still your parents." "Yes," I agreed, "but our relationship will never be the same." True to the agreement, my accounts were unfrozen the next morning. The reimbursement for our wedding expenses arrived shortly after, allowing us to repay our friends and clear the emergency debt we had accumulated. I immediately removed my parents as security contacts on all my accounts and updated my financial documentation to prevent any future unauthorized access. For the first few weeks after our confrontation, communication with my parents was limited to terse text messages confirming the execution of our agreement. My mother sent occasional tentative invitations to lunch or family dinners, which I politely declined. I needed time and space to process the enormity of what had happened. James never pressured me one way or the other. "Whatever relationship you want to have with them going forward is your decision," he said. "I will support you either way." 2 months after our wedding, I agreed to meet my parents at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant, halfway between our apartment and their home. The tension was palpable as we sat across from each other, making awkward small talk about the weather and local news. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have been doing some thinking and some reading. We found a family therapist who specializes in financial control issues." This was not what I had expected. "You are seeing a therapist." My mother nodded. "For several weeks now. Dr. Martin has helped us understand some patterns in our behavior that were harmful. We have a long way to go, but we are trying." I was skeptical, but cautiously optimistic. "What kind of patterns?" "Using money as a form of control," my father admitted. Dr. Martin calls it financial abuse. It was difficult to hear that term applied to our actions, but she helped us see how our behavior affected you. "We never intended to hurt you," my mother added. "We genuinely thought we were protecting you and the family legacy, but we went about it all wrong." "Yes, you did," I agreed. "Do you understand how humiliating it was? How violating to have my own money held hostage?" My father looked down at his hands. "I am beginning to." The therapist asked me how I would feel if my father had frozen my accounts on my wedding day. I had never considered it from that perspective. This small acknowledgement felt like a significant step. Not an apology exactly, but a recognition of the harm they had caused. "We would like you and James to join us for a session with Dr. Martin," my mother suggested. "If you are willing." I did not commit immediately, but after discussing it with James, we agreed to try a joint therapy session. The first meeting was uncomfortable with raw emotions and defensive reactions from all sides. But Dr. Martin created a safe space for honest communication. "Financial control often masks deeper fears," she explained. "For parents, it can be fear of losing relevance in their adult child's life. For the adult child, resistance to that control is about establishing identity and autonomy." Over the following months, we attended regular family therapy sessions. Progress was slow and uneven. There were setbacks and arguments, moments when old patterns threatened to re-emerge. My parents struggled to fully acknowledge the harm they had caused, or to completely let go of their controlling tendencies. But there were also breakthroughs. During one particularly emotional session, my father finally offered a genuine apology. "What I did was wrong," he said, his voice breaking. "I hurt you on what should have been the happiest day of your life. I was so focused on maintaining control that I could not see the damage I was causing. I am truly sorry, Amanda." Those words began a gradual healing process. We established new boundaries around money and family interactions. My parents learned to offer support without conditions. I learned to accept gestures of reconciliation without suspicion. James remained my steadfast partner through this journey. He attended therapy sessions when invited, but never tried to take over or speak for me. He maintained a respectful but cautious relationship with my parents, allowing me to set the pace for reconciliation. "You have grown so much through this," he told me one night, as we discussed a recent therapy session. "Standing up to them changed you." "For the better?" I asked. "Definitely. You are more confident, more certain of your own worth, independent of their approval." He was right. The painful experience of my parents' betrayal and my subsequent standing up to them had forced me to find strength I did not know I possessed. I no longer measured my decisions against their potential reaction or approval. I had proven to myself that I could face even the most devastating circumstances and emerge intact. The frozen accounts incident, as we came to call it, remained a sensitive topic in our family, but as time passed, it became less a source of active pain and more a watershed moment that had forced necessary change. My relationship with my parents would never be the same as before, but in many ways it had become healthier, built on respect, rather than control on boundaries, rather than manipulation. When James and I bought our first home a year later, my parents offered to help with the down payment. I was initially hesitant, but the gift came with no strings attached, no demands for input on our choice of neighborhood or house style. It was a small but significant sign of their progress. Financial independence had been hard-won, but the real victory was emotional independence. I had learned that standing up for myself was not selfish or ungrateful. It was necessary and right. I had learned that love without respect is not really love at all, and I had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to refuse to participate in unhealthy patterns, even when that refusal causes short-term pain. Looking back on that tumultuous wedding day, I now see it as the beginning of my true adulthood. Not because I got married, but because I finally stood firm against manipulation and chose my own path, regardless of the cost. If you are watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own relationships with parents, partners, or friends, know that you deserve financial autonomy. You deserve respect. And sometimes, you have to be willing to upset the status quo to create healthier dynamics. Has anyone else experienced financial control from family members? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more experiences about setting boundaries and finding freedom. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that standing up for yourself is not just brave, it is necessary for your well-being. Share this video if you know someone who might need to hear this message today.